I'm special. I'm not depressed. Season 1, Episode 9, Humanity. Are the windmill farms supposed to be not moving in the long shots? Like, it's a stylistic choice, and a lot of the static shots literally have nothing moving. I've noticed that this whole show. And I mention that because those windmill farms probably should actually be moving, because they're generating power, which the city's using right over there, right? So, Maine and Doriel were collateral damage to the true architect of this entire show, which is, of course, something so minor and so simple, isn't it? We already saw this earlier, and it's funny, the episode lays this out very obviously and overtly for the people that didn't catch on to that. But this is all, like what they're doing here is this is all Lucy's, Lucy. God, I almost said Judy. Judy and Lucy are a little bit too similar for my taste, especially given the roles. This is all Lucy. She saw something, she didn't like it, and she's been trying to cover it ever since. She's been killing the Arasaka Netrunner. She's been trying to shut down things, and she's been the one trying to make sure that Arasaka stays the hell away from the person she cares about. Which, if she'd only been honest with it about him, if she'd only told him to his face, might have actually saved him from a fate quite literally worse than death. Food for thought. You know, maybe think about that next time. So her motives are very, very clear, and he's just an idiot. Cool. There's this wonderful line that Faraday has where he says, "What are fixers if not glorified pet owners who keep their mercenary hounds well fed?" Said like someone who has absolutely no idea how this system works at all. I've said this before. I'll say this again. Faraday is a terrible fixer. Like, I honestly wouldn't trust Faraday if I was any of these people, especially Kiwi, who knows that he's screwing over a lot of people, right? Like, she's aware that he's betraying people. Like, he is absolutely a corpo wannabe. That's the shtick, isn't it? He thinks he's at corpo level. He super isn't. He's impressive. So, you remember what Dex's big mistake was? He burned his rep in order to try and get ahead in the corpo world. Do you remember what Dex's fate was? He's still not as bad as Dex. No, Dex was just... So, we see how extremely competent and capable Arasaka military is in very short order. There's a lot of little details. One detail that struck out at me is the van drives out in front of the car like this. The back exit of the van slams down on the hood. They jump out on the thing, kneel down, and do very precise, controlled shots to kill the people right in just a quick headshot, and then back to the thing. They were ready. They knew what they were doing, and it's a good way to show, you know, what the upper end of this kind of military is going to do. Yes, this is actually kind of how I picture stormtroopers in our wars. By the way, is at this level of competency and equipment. I've been slamming the animation of this show this entire time. This episode has much better animation in general. Almost all of it is kind of the pseudo-CGI thing, you know, the computer-generated animation, which isn't quite CGI, but you do get the overall point. And that makes sense. This is a very, very common trend in all of television. We actually, if I could bring a conversation from Discord into the show really quickly, it's understandable why most television shows don't have good animation, whether they're live action or whether they're animated. And that's because it's expensive. And that expense needs to be justified somewhere. And the problem is, shows generally don't have direct income. To explain this a little bit, if I make a movie and I put it into the theaters and I sell it, and then I sell DVDs of it, I sell Blu-rays of it, and I sell VHS tapes of it, then that's direct income I could tie to that movie. It's nice and easy on the accounting level, right? It takes this much to make this, and I make this much back. Where does a show make its money? Now, the answer to this is, of course, ad revenue, but ad revenue isn't quite the same as it used to be. We also see... What? That was very confusing. Toys is a thing, but generally speaking, most shows make their money through ad revenue or through subscription sales. But the problem with that is that's a lot more malleable and gray and gradient of a thing than it sounds like. Let me just try to explain this briefly. Let's say for a moment that I make a show and I put it on Netflix, and how much money did that show make? Because you can't look at that linearly from an accounting perspective. You can't say, well, let's look at how many people watched my show, multiply that by how many, those people's subs to Netflix, and that's the income. It doesn't work that way, because those people were subbed for a month to my show and many other shows. Now, I happen to know that one of the ways they try to balance the books here is what they do is they look at the shows people watched, and then they look at those people's subs, and then they divide it, right? So if I have this much money I spent, or this much time, like I subscribe to Netflix for a month, I spend this much time watching this show, this show, this show, this show, this show. All of those get my subscription divided amongst them equally. That's still not really an accurate figure, but I do know that a few services, including Netflix, have used this method in the past to determine how financially successful a show is. Yeah, sometimes it's a little bit more linear. Game of Thrones was a really, really obvious one. And honestly, Discovery Plus, with a lot of its Star Trek stuff, is another example here. But you can see how this isn't a show makes money through line. I'm not saying shows don't make money, quite the contrary, plenty do. But you can see how it becomes more of a and that means it's more of a fight. This is one of the weird reasons why backline producers are so important. Hang on. Thank you, Ben Smack, for the sub very, very much. Before I forget, if you want to put that towards up to 3 things, please let me know. Thank you. Because remember, there's always a producer, some dude or dudette, or in between. Dude it? I don't know. Dude them? Who is in the back there, who is trying to argue for their show to be on the air, for arguing for their shtick, right? Just like Rick Berman was for Star Trek for so long. But this is true for every show, for every game series, for every movie. There's always some person in a suit whose job it is to make sure that that is getting funded. Now, when you have a movie and you could say this budget, this cost, this return, it's a really easy thing, because all you have to do is throw up a simple graph saying, cost, budget, net, revenue. Boom! That's an easy thing to argue in the meeting room with the other executives when you're trying to argue against the money people that your movies should keep being greenlit. When you're doing a show, it's a little bit harder to justify that kind of a thing. I'm not saying it can't be. Obviously it is. This is something that a lot of talented producers have done for many years. And again, Rick Berman is someone who kept Trek on the air for years, despite dwindling sales and dwindling viewing figures through pretty much all of DS9 and Voyager's runs. He still managed it. He still won that fight. But the reason I'm getting through all of this argument is that some shows bypass these rules, but most don't. I've praised My Little Pony excessively for how incredible the animation is in that show. But you know what My Little Pony did? My Little Pony printed money. Because every single new thing that they did, and every single new character or set or location or whatever, things that would usually be an expense on any other show, was suddenly an income for them, because that's a new toy. That's something new that they can produce and sell. And if people happen to really like that particular episode that it's in, they have the figures on that. And they could say, oh, sure, let's push that out and merchandise it. And they made bank. Hasbro made a lot of money on MLP. And this is something that we've seen in a couple of other shows, including Simpsons. Because you think Simpsons makes money on its ad revenue? No. Simpsons makes money because of its merchandising. It's the same general thing. And you get it, right? Yeah, Transformers, another perfect example of this. It's why we keep getting new Transformers shows periodically. Or why the Transformers movies keep getting greenlit, despite some interesting relations to that. Merchandising is one of the most guaranteed ways to make sure something gets funded. It's one of the reasons Disney and Pixar have both been adhered to that, to their own detriment, actually, as I've talked about before. Yeah, Pokemon. I was just about to bring up Pokemon. You remember how Pokemon Violet, which needed more polishing past time and development time to really turn it into an unbuggy game that was more refined and more, more optimized? Didn't get it because its release date was established by the merchandising companies? That's a recent example. Yeah, this is a very, very old concept. This is nothing new at all. Even back with G.I. Joe and the original Transformers, which is some of the oldest stuff I'm aware of in detail, the reason those shows managed to be as funded as they are and have the backing that they did was because they were core commercials. that actually had some storylines and characters. I'm saying this wrong, but a lot of shows have actually done a lot of great work by maneuvering around the merchandising. Sure, MLP is a show to sell you toys, and it is. But rather than just fall into that pit and accept their fate, they decided to make a really, really, really good show. One of the best shows I've ever covered. Not every show does that. So let's bring this back to Cyberpunk here, because Edgerunners has been doing some good stuff, but it's mostly been skimping on the animation, for lack of a better way to put it. Some of it's stylistic, some of it's just saving money. You cannot tell me that there aren't shots where there's a distant shot and there's one tiny little thing moving briefly in the background, and that's not there to save money. Of course it is. You cannot tell me that while it works really, really well, all of the still shots of the actual city from the game are not there to save money. But there's also the concept of the money shot. One moment, please. Actually, yeah, Power Rangers, I wouldn't call Power Rangers a great show, but Power Rangers absolutely got a shot in the arm by virtue of the merchandising. Yeah, when David and Maine are talking, you can barely see them move it. Exactly, that's exactly what I'm talking about. By contrast, this episode is very much the money shot. I imagine the next one is going to be as well. Because that's how you do it. You save your time, you save your budget for when you really want it to shine. Again, this is true for live action and animation both. And that's just how that works. You have a limited budget. You're told up front, like if you're a producer, especially if you're a line producer in charge of a show, you're told, this right here, this is your budget for your show. For the whole show. For this whole season, I should say, to be more accurate about this. You got to manage this. You got to think very carefully about this. It's actually one of the reasons that there's so much that goes into crafting a show. There's a lot of work we've developed over a lot of decades for that. This is all a really long way to say that it's clear that they were spending a lot of that money here. This episode in particular looks much better than a lot of the stuff they've shown so far. And it's doing some really, really good stuff with it. And I just wanted to comment on that in brief, and instead I commented on it at length. I'll put it towards Dealer's Choice. Thank you, Ben Smack. So we have some really cool animation, big action sequences. I love how Rebecca is the only one who actually seems to give enough of a damn about David to try and be pulling him back here. Flat out says, don't use your San Devistan. He then immediately uses it 3 times in a row. And can I just say, Rebecca is just so good in this episode. Like, I've been liking her this whole time, but she's just kind of awesome here. She single-handedly drags this episode up for me. I'm not even joking. There's this wonderful bit where they're talking about how Arasaka and Militek are... This is what listening looks like! I can't go into details. There's so many individual cool stuff. They talk about the stalemate between Arasaka and Militek and how they want to move it forward. And this is so how the corporations operate, right? They could just have someone get into the damn thing and test it out in a live field exercise, even against, like, gangs or whatever. But no, they had to arrange a situation so that there's, you know, what do you call it? Plausible deniability, right? They had to hands off this whole situation. They contacted a fixer who arranged a situation so that there's a trap, so the trap's coming in, and now they have to go and use this thing in order to escape the trap, and that's what they want, is they want their field test. And this is all just about a field test. Seriously, the plot of this entire show is just a field test for a new bit of tech. That's all it is. Now, it's a rather impressive bit of tech, I'm not going to lie. This exoskeleton is kind of crazy when you think about it. It does screw over Militech a little bit. Yeah. I do... I love the bit where he activates his Sandevistan on the moving vehicle. And the lines that they've been showing this whole time are actually falling behind him because, of course, he's not moving, but he is moving because he's on the truck. It's just a nice little animation detail. And he says, I want... You're special. Remember? You're special. And he's like, okay. We also... I love how Rebecca's the only one who actually has enough of a brain in her head to process how incredibly bad of an idea this whole sequence is. Now... there's two things that I have to point out here. The first thing is I've been really enjoying the episode up to this point. It does two things that I don't care for. First of all, it treats cyberpsychosis like it's a line you cross over, right? Like, I don't like that in general in fiction. Whether it's radiation or a disease or a virus or whatever, it's the kind of thing where you build up to it and you build up to it, but everything's completely fine until you hit 100%, right? Yeah, exactly. It's very game mechanic-y. You're fine until you cross over the line. There's actually a term for that in TV tropes. I forget what it's called. But it's like the 1 HP threshold. You are perfectly functional and fully at your full tilt capacity as long as you have at least 1 HP left. But the moment you lose that 1 HP, critical existence failure. Thank you, Permeus. As always, I hope you're doing as well as you can be right now. Much appreciate. Yeah, exactly, Kiera White Noise. Like, as I've said, even with the game's version of cyberpsychosis, which, as we already talked about, is different from the pen and papers, this still probably shouldn't be a cross over the line and it's done kind of a deal. They even have the countdown thing, the building up bar, and it's up to 98%, and then she gets him and injects him with the thing, and that pulls him back. So that kind of lost me a little bit. There's also a tidbit where he so obviously recognizes that that's not Lucy calling him, and then decides to go ahead with it anyways, which, granted, he doesn't have much of a choice, but, like, they just walk right over that. And then we have the conversation between Lucy and David, the actual Lucy and David, which is some of the worst writing in the show, to be completely honest with you. It's really weird. Like, it's almost all of the typical dialogue tropes that I tend to rail against in fiction, wrapped into one scene. It's bad exposition. They're just straight out yelling she's just straight out yelling the story to him. It's for anybody who didn't catch it. His entire contribution to the dialogue is to act stupid and just say whatever she just said as a question mark right back at her. Metal Gear? You know, that thing. And the whole thing doesn't feel at all like anything approaching a natural conversation. I know that she's probably trying to explain a lot of things to him very shortly, but that's not what she's doing. She really is just explaining the plot to us on the off chance we didn't pick up on it up till this point in time. And then, of course, the moment she finishes explaining everything, that's when Faraday gets her again. And it's like, oh no! Okay. Yeah, the Kiwi Falco voiceover didn't really work either. Like, there's this whole thing where he takes on the suit. I know this is more an anime thing than anything else, but I've seen several fictions, especially books, do this kind of a thing. It's when, like, how do I explain this? So imagine if there's something going on the camera, and it's like, I have, like, nothing on my desk that's the appropriate thing. I've got my stupid clicker thing, right? So imagine I pull it up, and then I whip out the metal on it, and then I click it, and then I whip it back. And for whatever reason, this is impressive. Just go with me, okay? Just go with me. What they do in anime really leans into this is there's someone whose entire job it is to be there and talk about how impressive it is what I'm doing. You know the trope if you've seen any anime. Oh my god, he's got a blue 557-8 Aerotech full tech amazing clicker thing. Where did he get that? Nobody can actually use that? That's ridiculous. What's he gonna do next? Oh my god, he raised the metal band on it. I can't believe he even did that. Only 5% of people are even capable of raising that band. But there's no way he could possibly click it. Oh my god, he actually clicked it. This must mean, but no, that can't possibly be. Chakunk. Oh my goodness, he successfully closed it after clicking it. This is incredible. I've never seen someone with this kind of speed or skill before. Right? You've seen this scene. And that's what's happening when Rebecca and Marco are watching the battle as he's going and just absolutely crushing everything. And it's a shame because I liked the fight itself. I liked watching David just Shrek everything. Just absolutely stomping the Militech forces. I also like how it's very clear that this is really, really taxing on him. Like, he is pushing himself so hard and so far here that this is probably going to literally kill him, and he probably understands that. Yes, exactly, Loner. That's a good example of that. So it's a good fight. I love how he creatively uses the gravity generator. I love how he uses the magnetic fields in order to just kind of buy it. Like, there's some intelligence here. Like, it's well designed in addition to just being cool, right? And yeah, also David at this point is just a torso and a head. Getting closer to that Atom Smasher thing. And yes, he is now up there when it comes to tiering. He probably also has literally hours to live at this point. That's not even an exaggeration. Like, I would be shocked if this man lives one day after this. Even if, like, all right, everyone leaves him alone. Even if everyone perfectly just, everyone happiness and rainbows, he's dead. That man is dead at this point. He's pushed himself way too hard and way too far. Cut to credits. Because now they're going to go rescue Lucy. Oh, he is Zecto. You are my brother! Yeah, he is pushed to the peak. But the difference between him and Atom Smasher is sustainable. He can keep operating. David's dead. Now, I was asked to comment on something. I'm debating if I should do it here or the next episode. Because there's been something really weird in this show. What do you think, Evo? Should we talk about it here or next episode? And yeah, we only see the 2 injectors right here. I have a feeling there's a couple more, you know. Oh, he's pretty much one-winged angeling at this point. Dead man walking, but he's going to rescue Lucy before he goes out. Makes sense. Sadly, Evo is typing very, very slowly. Next episode. All right, we'll save the discussion for next episode, which we're going to go and get it. But let's go and rate this. I want to rate this higher, but I'm not going to because it did too many things wrong that irritated me. This should be a red episode. It's dragged down by some of the frustration. So I do think, however, with the good animation, with the good construction, with the good plot, with the good usage of the setup, I actually think this one pushes up to orange. I think it's low orange, but I think we have actually managed an orange episode, our second orange episode here. There's some good stuff here. And if you just kind of mentally block around some of the irritation, you still have some really, really good quality here. I'm kind of hoping we'll actually reach red next time. And by kind of, I mean definitely. Make sure to get your guesses in, by the way, because we're totally doing that now. I've already told my family I'm going to be late for dinner. Let's frickin' do it. Let's do it. Let's finish this up and let's watch Season 1, Episode 10. My Moon. My Man.